All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are tackling a big one, something I think we've all wondered about. Why do some of the least capable people out there seem so incredibly sure of themselves? You know who I'm talking about, right? Think about that person in a meeting or at a party, maybe even someone in your own family. They're just overflowing with confidence. They've got an answer for everything, but you kind of get the feeling they have no idea what they're talking about. It's maddening, but it's also really fascinating. And today, we're going to figure out exactly why this happens. So it all boils down to this thing we can call the confidence paradox. It's this weird upside down relationship we see all the time, where the less someone actually knows, the more they think they know. And this is really the core of it. People with genuine expertise, they often have a bit of humility, right? They're quiet because they know how complex things can be. But incompetence, oh, that often comes with a megaphone. They're just completely unaware of their own blind spots. And believe it or not, this isn't just a random observation. It's a real, documented psychological effect, which brings us to the actual diagnosis. Now, the official name is the Dunning-Kruger Effect, but I prefer a more descriptive name for it, the double curse. And trust me, once you understand what this is, you are going to see it absolutely everywhere. This quote just nails it. It perfectly breaks down the two parts of the curse. So the first curse is pretty simple. The person just isn't very good at something. But the second curse, that's the real kicker. Their own incompetence makes it impossible for them to see that they're incompetent. It's like they're wearing a cardboard crown, but every time they look in the mirror, they see golden jewels. The technical term for this whole thing is metacognitive blindness. Now, metacognition is really just a fancy way of saying thinking about your own thinking. It's that voice in your head that lets you step back and say, did I do that right? Or maybe I should double check that. If you don't have that skill, you're basically flying blind. You don't just make mistakes, you literally don't have the equipment to even see them as mistakes in the first place. And this chart really shows you the two sides of the spectrum. So over here on one side, you've got people with low competence. They don't just think they're a little better than they are. They grossly overestimate their skills. They can't see their own flaws. And what's really interesting is they often can't recognize real skill in other people either. But then you look at the other side. The highly competent folks, they do the complete opposite. They actually tend to underestimate themselves. They know exactly where their weaknesses are, and they have a sharp eye for talent. So let's flip the coin for a second and talk more about that second group, because their situation leads to what you could call the burden of expertise. This is the classic expert's dilemma, isn't it? For them, the mirror shows something totally different. The wise scholar doesn't see an emperor. They see a huge empty library stretching out behind them. And that library represents all the stuff they haven't learned yet. Every new book they read just shows them how many more books are out there. So why does this happen? Well, for starters, experts sometimes just assume that because a task is easy for them, it must be easy for everybody. Plus, like we said, they're painfully aware of just how huge their field is. And because their metacognition is so sharp, they're great at spotting their own blind spots, and they're actually eager for criticism that'll help them improve. It's why a world-class scientist might hesitate before giving you a simple answer. They're just too aware of all the nuance and all the things we still don't know. Okay, so this is all great psychology, but how does it help us in the real world? Let's get a little more practical here and talk about how to understand this when you see it in a rival or a competitor. Here is the most important takeaway. When you see that loud, over-the-top confidence, don't let it intimidate you. It's not a strength. You should see it as a weakness, as a big, flashing red light that signals a critical blind spot, a blind spot you can now anticipate. So what do? Well, here's a quick 3-step playbook. First, just identify it. Is all their talk backed up by actual results? No? Okay, check. Step 2, probe for depth. You don't have to be aggressive, but asking specific, evidence-based questions can quickly show if there's any real substance there. And finally, step 3, use their predictability. People who can't see the complexity of a situation often choose the simplest, most obvious path, which makes their next move a whole lot easier for you to guess. Okay, but before we wrap this up, there is one final and honestly the most crucial part of this whole discussion. It's really easy to see this in other people. The truly hard part is turning that spotlight back on ourselves. It's time for a look in the mirror. You know, the only real way to protect yourself from this virus is to commit to self-awareness. It's about developing intellectual humility. It's about always asking for feedback, always questioning your own beliefs, and really, truly embracing the idea that real wisdom doesn't start with knowing all the answers. It starts with knowing what you don't know. So I'm going to leave you with this one last question to think about. It is very easy to spot the cardboard crown on someone else's head. The real challenge, and maybe the true sign of intelligence, is making absolutely sure you're not wearing one yourself.